And today's panel is going to work with short presentations, 5 to 10 minute presentations on each of the organizations and the people, because as we are networking and meeting individuals from Detroit, I think it's always very helpful to just learn how people got into the jobs that they have, because there are no straight lines in the art and design worlds. So there's a lot of overlap. It's good to know what people's paths look like, because very shortly you'll be continuing on yours. So today we have Imani Bonner and Christina deRoos. Imani is coming from CultureSource. She is a program coordinator at CultureSource, and that is a member organization for nonprofit art and cultural organizations. She has over 12 years of professional experience in theater and the performing arts, and Imani brings this to her work at CultureSource. Prior to coming to CultureSource, she was responsible for program coordination, event planning, and artistic direction at the Henry Ford Museum. Imani is dedicated to expanding opportunities for artists and cultural organizations, ensuring that each event and grant initiative serves to inspire growth and collaboration across the community. And then we also have Christina deRoos, who is the director of the Kresge Arts Detroit. And she's going to talk a lot about Kresge, but that is a program that supports artists with unrestricted awards, currently over $1 million annually, and a professional development opportunities for artists. Christina is also an artist working in photography, video, and performance art. She's a curator, and she's an arts organizer. Her work lies at the intersection of art, activism, and personal reflection, and draws from her background in political science and law. Previously based in New York, Christina co-founded Bushwick Open Studios and Arts in Bushwick, and was the managing director of Shea Bushwick, a Brooklyn nonprofit dedicated to the advancement of interdisciplinary art and performance with a strong focus on experimental dance. So I've asked them to talk about their organizations, but also about their paths professionally into these organizations. So you're going to hear some hybrid presentations. So I think Christina's up first, and I'll turn the mic over. So we'll have about half an hour presentations and then a half an hour for Q&A. So, save your questions to the end, but, bring them. Christina? All right, thank you.
Hello. I cannot see anyone out there, as is typical in this spotlight. So can y'all give me a hello so I know there's people? Hi. Cool. I always really like things to be very informal as well. So I'm going to hit the presenter button. Cool. As was mentioned, I'm the director of Kresge Arts in Detroit. I'm just going to take you through some views of our website, which has all of the information. So feel free to check it out if I move at a pace or you were wondering about more things. KresgeArtsInDetroit.org is our main website. And then we also have Kresge Arts in Detroit Presents.art. That has a view of artists' work that we as a program have co-produced or produced and presented, et cetera. So over 15 years, the program now actually is in its 17th year, and we do provide no strings attached resources to artists through 3 different awards that I'll share a little bit about here in a moment. And no strings attached means that when artists receive the award, you can do whatever you want with them. And so that might be certainly a part of one's artistic practice to say, oh, I want to finish this project or have this show. But it might be saying, I want to go to a residency, or I want to take care of someone who's in my family. I need a new car, and I need to do whatever the things are, just absolutely anything whatsoever. So the program I'm going to show you the 15-year trailer here for a second to give a quick overview, and then I'll talk more about where we are at this moment in time. So here goes magic. So from that, hopefully the takeaway is that we fund artists at a variety of career stages, different mediums that folks are working in, as well as traditional to contemporary forms. Lots more information about the specifics of that and the selection criteria for the awards, again, on our website. So currently, we just started our 17th program year. November 1st, the application information for the next cycle will go live. Bad news, it is not open for folks who are currently enrolled full-time as students. But as soon as that's done, it is absolutely open. And most folks who are students know people who are artists who aren't currently students, so please tell them. And so November 1st is when guidelines will come out. December 1st, the application opens. January 3rd Thursday is when the application is actually due. It's completely free. And so that's for the fellowships and for the Gilda Awards. So to date, as of July of 2024, we had funded 380 artists through 16 Kresge Eminent Artist Awards. That's a Lifetime Achievement Award. That one is not an open application process. And then 302 fellowships and 62 Gilda Awards for a total of $9 million. That's in direct, no strings attached funding. When I mentioned that we present work, sometimes produce work, we pay artist fees separately, so that's not in that $9 million total. And it's all for Tri-County Detroit artists, so Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb. So there's 3 awards. Kresge Eminent Artist Award, as I mentioned, that's a Lifetime Achievement Award. In 2024, that award became $100,000. Historically, that had been a $50,000 award. Kresge Artist Fellowships historically had been $25,000 each, and last year they'd bumped up to $40,000 each. And we had 25 of them last year in honor of the Kresge Foundation's 100-year centennial. The Lifetime Achievement Award, the Eminent Artist Award, that's 1 award per year. And then the Gilda Awards came in later in honor of Gilda Snowden, who was an incredible artist, also a professor, and several other roles at the College for Creative Studies. When she unexpectedly passed, we were able to create an award in her honor, which is $5,000, and that has stayed at that number since I think it was 2015, if I remember accurately. So we have 3 different no strings attached awards. This year, Nora Chapa Mendoza is the Kresge Eminent Artist. So I encourage you to go to the website, check her out. Her work as a painter and an activist and an educator is just absolutely phenomenal and a great example of different trajectories that folks' careers can take. There have been 16 awards to date. For the Kresge Eminent Artist Award, there are monographs on the Kresge Foundation's page. So we're a grantee of the Kresge Foundation. We're administered by the College for Creative Studies, which makes us an intermediary program, meaning we sort of operate in the middle. Each one of these artists receives a monograph publication, and those are free. If they're still available in print, then you can go to the Kresge Foundation's website, kresge.org, and say, hey, I'd like one. And they'll mail one to you. And they're always available also as a downloadable PDF. And they are an amazing resource to Detroit history and the variety of artists, again, across disciplines, music and painting. And of course, one of the artists here, Ruth Adler-Schnee, was a very close connection with Cranbrook as well. So in January of 2025, there will be another Kresge Eminent Artist, and you will be able to find information about that at the time when it comes out. Shifting to Kresge Artist Fellowships, this is what came out last year at the beginning of November, so very soon there will be something that says 2025, and it will note the number of awards that are coming up this next year, and perhaps some other exciting information. Gilda Award recipients. Another thing I wanted to nope, I'm on the right side. Here we go. So 2024, you'll see it says Live Arts and Film and Music. That's because we run on a 2-year cycle. And so this year, we'll be back to visual arts and literary arts. And then next year, we'll be back, the following year, I should say, to live arts, which includes all the things that are meant to be seen in person. So dance, theater, performance art, et cetera. And then, of course, we have music and film, which are together in one category. And there's interdisciplinary as options also in all of our categories for folks to apply. So then we have the Gilda Award recipients, as I mentioned. Shifting on to just note that all of the awards are selected by panels that change every year. Those of us on staff have nothing to do with the selection of various artists or the review of the applications. We do select the panelists each year. There's always 2 local, 3 national. I did that correctly. And so every year it's a different set of individuals who are reviewing. And for the sake of not just talking about this program, but about many programs, in thinking about as an artist applying to things, if you apply to something and it is application-based and it is a different panel every year, then there's no reason not to apply year after year because you have different people interpreting whatever the selection criteria may be. So my tip is just apply often. And don't take it personally if you don't get it, because that is the nature of things, is just how often it takes. So have a awareness that if approached, in my opinion, in a way of putting together an application, so it's like looking at your own practice and saying what's important to me, and giving people your work to review, and then saying like, y'all either select me because you know what's up or you don't, and that's fine, but I've done my part, which is to put my application in. And then if it's a no, it's like, yep, okay, not this year, but just keep going forward, because there will usually be more no's than yeses in the field of applying for support. So this is just an example of the fact that these are selected by panels. The Eminent Artist Award is a nomination-based award, and that is also selected by a group of individuals. They remain anonymous until the award is announced, but again, on our website, it does indicate who those folks were, and it changes from year to year. So that one's not open application, but the fellowships and Guild Award recipients are. This is just noting that literary and visual is the alternating year. Already mentioned that this is an intermediary program. Values that drive the program for those of us, we're a staff of 7 artists right now. All of us have an active creative process, although it can be challenging sometimes when working a full-time job in arts admin to maintain that practice, but we do. So the values, again, are there on our website, but this is something that we came up with as a team, and that we do refer back to these whenever there's something that comes up, that there's a question of like, well, how do we apply this? Or what does this mean in this circumstance? This is what grounds us, and we put these words into practice in ways that we make sure that we can point back. If somebody says, well, what does that mean? How did you do that here? We're able to say, well, it's because we did X, Y, and Z. One of the things that I like to highlight is that in 2022, we became wage certified, which is working artists for the greater economy. For sake of time, I'm just going to leave it right there, but I encourage you to check it out. I mentioned Kresge Arts in Detroit presents.art. This is that website. So I've flipped from our main website, which has a lot of information about how to apply for awards, to this one, which has to do with our online exhibition, for example, which is featured here. Information about what it is, which is a platform dedicated to advancing and showcasing the work of the fellows, the Guild Award recipients, and the broader Detroit artist community. There are occasions when we're able to actually provide artist fees or to support artists who have not yet received awards through the Kresge Arts in Detroit program. You can see all of the films also on that CADE Presents website, or also on our main website. You can search any artist by discipline, by name, etc., and their individual film, which is 2.5 to 3 minutes, will show up on their page. And that trailer that you saw earlier for our 15-year, that was all drawn from clips of the first 15 years of films, so that gave you an idea of what those films look like. The Practice Essay Series is featured on the CADE Presents site, and that's interviews by fellow Lillian Waller, who interviewed a variety of Kresge Artist Fellows and Gilda Award recipients, and so that's, again, a great resource about Detroit artists. We collaborated with the Metro Times for the last, I'm not sure quite how many years, but we provided artist fees to all of the folks who participated in the Metro Times fiction issue and annual issue, and those are available. This was actually something that was started by a Kresge Artist Fellow who approached us during COVID and said, hey, here's this cool thing we're doing. Maybe you want to know about it and promote. And thanks to the Kresge Foundation, we had some flexible resources, and we're able to say, not only do we want to promote, but how about we provide artist fees for everyone who participated, and can we talk about participating going forward? I'm going to skip this. And so, as I mentioned, we're a staff of 7 artists, and I myself am also an artist. I'm going to do a quick time check. Am I doing okay? I'm at 12. I'm going to this part is much shorter. Are y'all still with me out there so far? Okay, cool. So my bio was already shared in the intro. Thank you very much. So we're saving time. I do want to note that as an individual artist, I consider my practice to include being the director of Kresge Arts in Detroit and everything else that I do. Not everyone who works in arts administration takes that view. That's just something very personal to me. I feel like every day I'm an artist. When I leave my house and I decide how I'm going to drive down the road, this is choreography. When I'm in a work meeting and I'm wondering if this is a great use of time, I might think about how I can shift and what character I can be. Or if I'm frustrated at the way things are going, it's like, who do I need to be in this moment in order to shift the dynamic of the way this play is going? I say that as someone who is self-taught, right? My background's political science and law. So someone has told me once before, maybe several people, it's a benefit of not going to art school is you don't know the rules you're breaking. So please forgive me when I begin to show you some of my work because I won't know the rules that I'm breaking, and you all will. So this is some of my work as within photography and things like that. I tend to work very low tech. I'm a Gemini. I'm incredibly impatient, and I don't like carrying around lots of cords and cables, and I don't like sitting in front of computers when I can avoid it. I do like having a solid job where I know where my paycheck comes from, and I like being able to not have to work for others with my creative practice. When I had a time living in New York where I began to get some small commissions and other gigs, I realized that I do not do well with other people having control over my creative process or end result. So I distinguished those two and found a way to be creative in the world and contribute that's distinct from whether somebody says, I think your photography is great, or I don't think it's good at all. It has nothing to do with whether my rent and things get paid. So this is an example of some photography. I tend to work in all kinds of ways that have to do with layering of images, because that's how I tend to experience the world, as a giant, beautiful, messy process. These are things that I did during actually COVID, driving between Detroit to the Pacific coast of Mexico. This is a piece that I did during a residency at a facility called Guapamacataro, which is in Morelia, outside of Morelia, Mexico. I'm going to skip video, but we'll note that I also do video work. I have historically done work with dancers and with musicians doing real-time video mixing in improvised environments. This is just another screenshot of that. I also have historically found ways to work with individuals in contexts where I'm using my artistic practice as a process rather than a product. That tends to be most of what I do. But in this, for example, and you can see I just screenshotted this today from my favorites, right? Like, that's what being an artist allows me, in my way I define it, to just be like, this is what I'm going to show. So this, my mom was living in an assisted living facility, and she's in the top row in the middle. And so I was working with a set of folks who were residents and some staff members that were there, and we did obviously multiple exposure images, and then they gave me a word based on a prompt that had to do with nature and environment and how they felt about things, and then I put that word in, and it was all done in cell phones and done in about 1 minute after they took it, so that I could show it to them back and they could choose the one that they liked. Most of them thought this was super weird and also super fun, including my mom. And this is just a last photo that reminds me that being an artist is a way of life, and it's one that I absolutely cherish, and I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit with you. I have a couple books I'm happy to recommend called Making Your Life as an Artist. These are free downloads on the Artist U website. These have nothing to do with Kresge Arts in Detroit. If you're interested in philanthropy at all, then I recommend Money as Medicine, and there's also a book called Decolonizing Wealth, and I think those are fantastic ways of thinking about the possibilities and the contemporary practice of philanthropy. That's what I got. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
All right, hello everyone. Hi. As Lynn said before, my name is Imani Bonner, and I am a program coordinator for CultureSource. I'm going to go ahead and see how to pull up the presentation. I will see it. I believe I will see it. Let's see. I don't see it.
It's on the desktop.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yep. So. Oh, they're controlling it. Yeah, that's super weird. Yeah. So if you click on it,
It'll work. Okay. Thank you guys for being here today to listen to me, and thank you, Lynn, for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here. I'm going to give you a warning. Christina had a beautiful, colorful, gorgeous presentation. Mine will not be that. It will be very simple. It will be very to the point. So today I'll talk a little bit about CultureSource, very briefly. Oh, it's not coming. Do I have to do pre? Oh, there we go. There we go. All right. So CultureSource, who we are. So Lynn did mention this, but we are a member association for nonprofit arts and cultural organizations in Southeast Michigan, serving Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, Washington, Livingston, Monroe, and St. Clair counties. We do this work through hosting professional development workshops that grow creative and leadership capacities. We present programs that provide a space for exchanging ideas about arts and culture, and we lead initiatives that bring together stakeholders that are interested in the public accessing creative expression. So how do we service both individuals and organizations? Well, there's a couple different programs that we have, and I'll get into what specifically I do. But starting out, we have an internship opportunity for high school students called the Bloomsburg Arts Internship. The Bloomsburg Arts Internship Program is a national program, and we partner with them for Detroit. The BAI program places rising Detroit high school seniors in paid internships at our arts and culture member organizations. We also conduct or facilitate research. We partner with research firms to provide timely and relevant research to understand the core being of what we do, our field, in the arts, as well as emerging trends and advancements. And usually this research is used to give to different organizations and foundations that may even impact the type of grants that we offer. We also have our change-making program, and that is professional development that's facilitated through training for facilitators, consulting, and leadership development. And lastly, we have grant making. So this is the sector in which I work. I do grant making and events. But today I'll just focus on grant making. So grant making essentially is re-granting. And we re-grant for the purpose of distributing funds that are given to us from donors, foundations, philanthropists, and large organizations. What we do by grant making is distribute these funds, and we create programs with an intentional focus, usually related to that organization or foundation, with an intentional focus for which qualifying organizations, cohorts, and individuals may apply. And by individuals, I mean artists. So what exactly is re-granting? So re-granting is for us, is a funding model that we use where we distribute grants to local arts and cultural organizations and individual artists or arts administrators as well. And we do that through intentional community focus process. The purpose of this is to provide equitable access to funding. And the impact that we hope it has is to empower local arts and culture workers, cohorts, organizations, and to bring their creative projects to life and also contribute to community development. So I want to talk a little bit about the re-granting process. I'm hoping this information will be valuable for you to understand and take into consideration when you apply for grants. So for the process, there's always the element of eligibility. The applicants need to meet the basic criteria, and that varies based off of the grant program. Most of the time, especially for CultureSource, it has to do with residency because we do service the Southeast Michigan area. Project type, and just it varies based off of the grant and the foundation that's associated with the grant. The application. So the application, and I'll get a little more into this, the elements usually include a detailed proposal, a budget, work samples, and a project timeline. Again, this is just standard, but it also does vary what's required for the application. The next step in the process is usually a review panel, and that's a group of arts and culture professionals that review and scores the applications. And then lastly, we have the funding decision. Selected applicants receive funding based off of their project's merit, feasibility, and alignment with the program goals. Going a little deeper into the grant application, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with grants yet or not, but it's very simple, or can be simple. Usually there's a project description, which is a clear, concise explanation of the project and its goals. Let me see if I can think of an example. Right now, we have a grant that's actually closing today. The application is closing today, and it's called the Flourish Fund Program. For that grant, we partner with the Andy Warhol Foundation, and that grant is focused on public-facing events and projects that are risk-taking. So that's just an example of how a grant program can be focused on a specific, like, niche area. Next, we would usually ask for a budget, which is a detailed financial breakdown of how funds will be used. And then we will ask for work samples, strong work examples of your, we would ask for strong examples of your previous work to showcase your artistic quality. And then next, we would probably ask for a timeline, and that's a realistic and organized timeline for completing the project. Here are a few tips for applying for grants. First things first, you want to start early. Give yourself time to develop a strong application. You don't want to rush to do a grant application because you really want to sit with the grant, sit with the purpose of the grant, and also sit with your own art and figure out how it aligns with the grant. So start early. You want to have time for revision and also maybe sending it to friends or someone you trust to give you some valuable feedback. You want to research the grant. Like I said, align your project with the mission and goals of the granting organization to make sure that that aligns. And then tell your story. I think personally this is one of the most important parts of applying for a grant and having a good chance of being successful. You want to make your proposal personal and compelling. Show why your project matters and how it will impact the community. I think it's so important to share who you are, why you are an artist, what makes you passionate, because we want to be passionate about your art too. Next, be specific with the budgets. Include all expenses and provide clear explanations of each expense. Again, you kind of want to be as detailed as possible because we want a full vision on how this award will help you get to where you need to be. And lastly, seek feedback. Have others review your application before submitting. It's always great to have another set of eyes on things to maybe catch any mistakes, or even if someone knows about your work, they may suggest something that they feel is valuable to include in your application. Common mistakes to avoid. I think it's important to highlight mistakes because I always hate when there may be an applicant that had like a wonderful application, but there may be something that disqualifies them. So you want to watch out for these things. Watch out for vague descriptions. You want to be specific about your project goals and the outcome. Again, we want to know what are your goals, what drove you to want to share this project or create this art, and what are you hoping for the outcome with this grant money? Like how will this advance you, or how will this advance the arts community? Incomplete applications. Ensure all of your required documents are submitted. It's very, very sad when someone has, like I said, a beautiful application, but they may have forgotten one required form, and it's like we have to just disqualify you, and we don't want to disqualify ourselves for small reasons like that. Underestimating costs. Provide a realistic and thorough budget. Again, you want to be thorough because a lot of times reviewers do want to see how will this money go towards this project, but will it be spent on? And not every grant will be for the purpose of a project. This is kind of a standard thing. Sometimes, as Christina mentioned, you may need the grant money to pay your rent, and that's okay if the grant states that it's okay for those type of spending costs. But when it comes to a project, you want to be very specific about the budget. And even when talking about how it could impact your personal life, be specific about that too, because we all understand that it's hard for artists to make art if they're struggling in their personal life. It's very distracting, I would know. All right, did I do that? I did. Ignoring guidelines. Follow all application instructions carefully. So please just read through everything and just go through that process exactly how it's described. How to connect with CultureSource. Visit culturesource.org to find out more about our offerings and utilize this as a resource. Of course, we have grants, we have job opportunities, and by job opportunities, we usually share our member organizations' job opportunities. So you definitely want to look out for that. And we have a resource library that is a wealth of information. It's so much content on there. It's so much. I haven't even gone through all of it. And then also, if you want to stay in the loop, visit culturesource.org/subscribe to subscribe to our newsletter and find out about programs, events, grants, and more. So, in conclusion, grant making or regranting is basically where we create grant programs to disperse money, basically, from foundations, philanthropists, donors, different organizations that have a specific goal or have a specific theme that they want to usually express in the arts community. And sometimes that is also based off of research. Ensure that you meet the criteria for a grant program and that you are eligible. You also don't want to waste your time doing a grant application, which can be very, I won't say taxing, but it's very detailed and elaborate. You don't want to waste your time doing that and you're not even eligible in the first place, so make sure you look at the eligibility requirements. Include all elements, I did that. Sorry. An application usually requires a project description, budget, work samples, and timeline. That's just standard, but again, that's not a rule for every grant. And again, start early, do your research, share your story, be specific with your budget, and seek feedback. And then lastly, again, Christina had mentioned this, which is very important. You will a lot of times get rejected or hear no's, and that's not, I don't want anyone to ever be discouraged from applying for grants based off of that. Because also, the more that you apply for grants, the better you get at applying for grants. And you're more likely to get some yeses the more practice you get and the more that you network with people. Like, it's very important. So stay positive and stay connected. Thank you and good luck. If you would like to ask me any questions, this is my email right here, and I would be happy to hear from you. Now, do I have time to go into? Sure. Okay, I'll be quick. So my story is that I started out as an artist. I've been in the arts since I was a kid. I went to a performing arts high school. I went to Michigan State for theater with a concentration in acting, which I love theater and I love acting. I pursued that a while after college, and I actually moved to New York in 2019, not the greatest time to move to New York, to pursue acting, and literally it was not a good time to move to New York. So came back home in 2020, and I just want to be so transparent because I know, like, as artists, it's close to our heart, and we're also transparent. I was completely lost after that. I was like, maybe I'm just not meant to do theater. Like, it was extremely discouraging for COVID when COVID hit, as I know a lot of people struggled after COVID. So I just worked some other jobs after that, and then eventually I was just like, no, I went to school for theater. I know about theater, and I want to work in theater. And I was very intentional about that at a certain point. So from there, I got a job at the Henry Ford as a supervisor for the dramatic programs and town life. Why am I blanking? Their dramatic programs and town life department, there's the word. So during that time, I became very passionate about exploring diversity at the Henry Ford. And so that kind of geared me, I'm grateful I had the opportunity to do this, but that geared me towards creating dramatic programs that essentially accurately represented Black history. From there, that's when I started to get into playwriting and just also facilitating workshops that were theater related. And then from there, this may seem backwards, but I had a method to my madness. I decided to do their internship, which was more creatively focused. And from there, I actually created a program, wrote a dramatic program for them for their holiday nights program, and I also just did more involvement with the artists that were coming into the Henry Ford. Moving on from the Henry Ford, I got this perspective as an artist, and I also got a perspective as a playwright, or as an actor, as a playwright, and also just aiding artists. And I really wanted to know, how can I help artists in a different type of way? And that's where I got into grant making. And that moved me on to CultureSource, where I got to explore that. So I'm gonna be transparent, I'm new to it, and I'm excited about what I've learned, and I've learned so much about myself as an artist and my colleagues and friends and family as artists through working through grant making. And I just want to stress that it's so important to apply to get money. Your work is important, it's beautiful, and it's an extension of yourself, and you deserve to get paid for it. So that's all I have. Go apply for a grant. Thank you.
It looks like you have a question. No? Okay. And I will give you the mic in a second. So I love the narrative that you both shared about how you got here, and I think this is really, it was so generous, but it's also really important to remember that these people are doing this because they also are artists and are passionate about doing this, and there are people on the other end of this. So, and I had a question about is sort of what, and you kind of addressed it, but what are kind of the most common mistakes that you see from especially emerging artists, if I can categorize you guys as that. You'll be emerging in something new by then, but most common mistake.
Sure. So I would say the most common mistake I see when it comes to applying for grants and applying for funding is believing that you won't get it. I feel like we had a major grant. It's called the ARC Fund, and it's the award is for $20,000. And so I told my friends and family about it, and they kept saying, like, they kept being super intimidated about the fact that it's so much money, but you really have to believe that you are worth that. Like both me and Christina said, you will get a lot of no's sometimes, but that should not stop you from continuously going after those opportunities. So I would say, as an artist, I know like I said, we're sensitive, and we can, have insecurities about our art. Literally my advice, besides some of the things that I listed up there, is work on your confidence. Work on truly your confidence. Work on being able to word things in a certain type of way. I am going to say that I love ChatGPT. I really do. I love ChatGPT, and it's actually taught me a lot. If you feel like you don't have a bunch of experience, put it in your words, put it into ChatGPT, and then say it like this. Honestly, I believe a lot of people who apply for grants do that, and I do it in my work. So my advice is literally believing that you can do it and just start to learn more about the process. Yeah, be confident.
I fully second that. I would also add that I think folks sometimes don't spend enough time on work samples and making sure that they are like the high quality, best representation of your work. That, of course, depends on the application. But if I'm speaking to things that fund individual artists, whether that might be the Kresge Arts in Detroit Fellowships, or thinking of USA Artists or Creative Capital or some of these other resources, of course, some of the things that CultureSource has as well. Sometimes there'll be just incredibly beautifully written narrative and artist statements, and then the work samples will be clearly like rushed, or they're just not high quality, especially with video or with documentation of a painting or something like that. If folks aren't using a tripod or things aren't color corrected, or we've all done it. I've done it, right? It's like the last thing I get to is the work samples. So I recommend doing it the opposite direction and start with the work samples and then tell the story. And then the second thing I would say, in addition to really thinking about quality of work samples, is writing in your own voice. It's really easy to get into kind of philanthropy speak and start using all kinds of words, and I think that will detract from the passion that you mentioned. And that ties into having the confidence that speaking in your own voice is great, because you're more likely to be confident in telling the story that as you believe in it, and that will come through. Sometimes when I've found myself defaulting to sort of grant speak, it's because I actually don't know what I'm trying to say yet, and I'm a little bit blocked. And so then I need to just spend more time figuring out, like, how would I explain this to somebody who doesn't work, bless you, in grant making, or who's not an artist? And if I can get it in that language, and it's clear and it's interesting, then odds are I can come back and I can write about it. That being said, apply any grant on time with whatever you've got. If they're crummy work samples and the narrative's a little wonky and you're like, I don't even know what I'm looking for, but I just want to get some money, get that money. That's fine. Apply.
Sure. I think most of us are probably here as individual artists, but what about like groups of artists or collectives? And is that something that you usually like want to see an established like history of work and working together, or and then now that can go for individual artists too, like. I am a resident of Detroit now, and will be after I graduate. But I know that there have been times when I've wanted to apply for things, not here, but in other places, where I didn't have a time as a residence, to establish residency, and it kind of leaves me in this position of like, I can't actually apply for anything anywhere. Do y'all need some sort of like, for individuals, do you like to see like an established, roots in Detroit? And then for groups, do you want to see like years of collaborative work, or? Yeah.
I think that it depends on the grant. For example, the one grant that I mentioned that closes today, that's called Flourish Fund. I believe you do need to collaborate with someone, but there nowhere on the description page does it say that it needs to be for a certain amount of time. So, don't. Also, I would say that don't count yourself out if it does not explicitly say that. There's so many times where we'll get questions about certain things, like emails, and I'll go to my manager and I'll say like, "Are they allowed to do this?" And she's like, "Well, we didn't say on the description page they couldn't." So that's my answer for that. It just depends on the description page, and just look at it closely.
For Kresge Artist Fellowships, which it is one application for fellowships and Gilda Award recipients, or Gilda Award eligibility, you do have to be a resident of the Tri-County Detroit area for 2 years prior to the application deadline. We do verify eligibility once someone is selected, so it's not at the front end, but at the other end, if you get to the last stage, then there'll be a very in-depth check to make sure that people are legal residents. In order to make sure that we're doing what the program is to do. There is an option to apply as collaborating groups, and again, for the fellowship program, one does need to have a track record of having collaborated together, and everyone in that group needs to meet the eligibility criteria, including legal residency. I didn't go through the specific selection criteria, which are on our website, but for the fellowships, it's a demonstrated track record of high-quality work. So to your question about collaborating groups, that's where it ties into that eligibility spot to say, well, this group needs to have collaborated together in order to have that demonstrated track record. There's also the ability to grow and advance during the award year, and also then the ability to reflect, enhance one's community or communities within Metro Detroit. So that's not word for word, but that's what I got in my brain right now for the selection criteria. For folks who have a existence of either being part-year residents in multiple places or et cetera. I have cards here I'm happy to share, and to, because of that legal background side, I have, and I'm happy to support in terms of some of the nuances around legal residency wherever it may be. And when there are opportunities to look for national awards and support, that may be a good way to go also, if it's like I was a resident here and now I'm here. But actually legally changing residency often is, it's different than physical presence. So it has to do with things like, where is your driver's license? Where is your car registered? Where is your true fixed permanent home? I will stop there at getting geeky.
Hi. I find the budget part of the application process to be really opaque. And I guess I'm wondering if you can speak more about it, or even if you have templates or examples that you would be willing to share with us of a successful budget on an application. Because I think, like, writing, I can write. Art, I can make the art. It's just a matter of doing it well. But the budget thing, I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know what it's supposed to look like.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so I have a little bit of an easier version of answering this one, because the fellowship application doesn't require a budget because it's no strings attached. So all props for funding that is no strings attached, which I know you all have some of those, and there's reasons that things come different ways and why funders want to see budgets and grants. Like, those have a certain place in the world. I don't happen to work for a spot where we see lots of those, but I could come up with a template for one if that's helpful, although I think you'll be a better resource for that for sure. I will say that if you can do all of the things as an artist, you can absolutely get a knack for budgets, and they can really be fun. One of the things that I've found historically is tricky about budgets is it's really hard to know in advance before you do the thing what it's going to cost. So I'm not sure if you're well, I should say this. My struggle historically hasn't been with creating a budget, it's been with predicting the future. And that's, so then I just let it go and go, I'm going to do my best from there. And with that, I'll hand it to you.
Well, my answer is kind of the same, which is why I was like, maybe you have more in-depth information. So yeah, the same. I agree. The hardest part is knowing, like, how will these funds actually be spent. So just do your best. Map out a cost of things, and if it doesn't actually get fulfilled that way, unless it is specific in the grant application that you need to show us how you spent these funds. And I'm not saying misuse funds. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that. Don't misuse it. But I'm just saying that, you know, something I was told recently is that the reviewers for the grant that's closing today will be lenient when it comes to budget, because it is understandable that you don't know what will come up, what costs will come up. We just want to see an idea for this grant. You want to see an idea of how you plan to use it. Again, I'm going to say, I had a friend literally contact me today who was applying for that grant, and the budget was the hardest part for them. And I had stressed them, use ChatGPT as a resource. And don't use it as a cheat code, because I also want to specify, Christina did such a beautiful job, and I wish I would have said it first, in explaining that you need to use your own voice and sound like a person and like show that you are human and why you're creating this art. So when I say use ChatGPT, you don't want to sound like a robot. You want to get ideas from ChatGPT and then put it in your own words. So the same with the budget. My friend ended up, she's like, oh, I asked ChatGPT to make me a budget based off of all these details, and it worked out just fine. And what it will do, it will teach you in the future how to make a budget. So I would say don't overthink it. Just do your best. And unless the grant specifies that you have to show how you use those funds and it needs to be identical to the budget, don't overthink it too much.
I just want to add one more thing that made me think about, which is pay yourself. Make sure that that's in that budget. Pay your collaborators, artist fees in that. And some of the times, again, I'll find that if I'm stumped on the budget, it's because I'm not really sure what I want to do. And I'll go ahead and apply anyway and be like, hey, I think it's going to look like this, but this is a work in progress, or this is an early phase of something. Whereas if there's something I've done before and I'm repeating a former project, then I may know, like, oh, I've got print costs. Oh, I want to pay collaborators. Then I have some basis. And so you tell people honestly which it is. And then sometimes there's the thinking about what level is it worth applying for a grant, because if I'm considering what is my hourly to apply for something that I might not get, which is what is my hourly if I just do some contract work and I know I'm going to get paid if I pay attention and get a contract with a good person that I'm working with, right? So sometimes that balance can be there, and I think that is part of the strategy. If I have more to add to this, but about thinking about submitting for things to kind of get comfortable with grants and to just constantly be able to cut and paste and say, oh, an artist, this is the same project, bring it over. This isn't going to take me a lot of time. The first time it does, after that it's faster. But if every time I'm coming up with a new project, which my brain does tend to do that, then there's other ways that I might need to fund those things, because I simply don't, I'll burn myself out trying to talk about something each time and reinvent the wheel. But then I might just take an eagle eye view of my practice and be like, yeah, I don't really know exactly what I'm going to do. I might end up working in an assisted living spot and doing a project with folks who are residents there. Or maybe I'm going to end up with my friends who are artists and a performance art space. It's going to go that direction. But either way, what I know I'm going to be doing is something that's process-based. It's participatory. It's going to reflect aging, sickness, and death, because I seem to not be able to work on anything that doesn't have to do with that, no matter how hard I try. Or existential dread, but also joy, right? Like, so I can go to that level. And again, writing in that way, I'm like, you're either going to get me or you're not. And if you don't, it's totally cool. But if you do, someone's going to be like, oh, yeah, that person, right?
I have a question. Thank you for sharing all this information. Say, I'm an artist who doesn't only do work in my studio, like personally, but I also do community practice. Say, for instance, setting up a space, a residency space that serves other artists. And I'm making that part of, or like an extension for my practice. When it comes to applying for grants under that kind of structure, is that something that in the past other artists have been able to like successfully get support from the Kresge Arts Foundation or through your network at CultureSource? And like how would that work? Yeah.
Would you consider that like arts administration or curating?
I am both. I'm both an artist and an art administrator. Legit. Yeah.
Well, so again, I had to keep repeating this, but it depends on the grant. There are some grants that are specific to artists and the art that you produce, and then there is also opportunities for artist administrators and curators. So I would just say you want to look at if you're eligible or what the eligibility requirements are. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep, community building. Yeah, so I would say overall, CultureSource, yes, we do support that type of work. But again, it's just individual to the grant specifically.
So, Kresge Arts in Detroit is a grantee of the Kresge Foundation. The Kresge Foundation itself, kresge.org, I would definitely encourage you to check out their KIP-D, KIP:D program, and some other things. KIP, KIP:D, and then maybe there's a plus after it now because I think it's Hamtramck too. But it will be there. So it's KIP-D, and so there might be something down that trajectory that that is a match for you. Kresge Arts in Detroit, we provide fellowships, and so again, no strings attached funding. It's distinct from grants. We do ask for a midterm and a final report, but there's no budgets. We ask people generally to share optionally if they can, how they spent the money, et cetera, things like that. But people can literally be like, thanks for the check, we're out of here, and never talk to us again, and like, that's fine. And so the trick there is to define your practice as all of the things and to submit work samples that will fit and be compelling in the category. So I'd be happy again to speak with you some more if that's of use, because I have found that challenging in the world. Sometimes people get it and they go, oh, right, when you're running a residency program or creating a program, that's a creative practice in and of itself. And there's different ways that people view that. And so I think it's just really about making it something that even if people don't come into the mindset understanding and they want to go, oh, no, I'm going to put that in a box over here, that's not being an artist. And then I feel like it is unfortunately sometimes the burden on those of us who don't see those as siloed practices to really present it in a way that people get it. And there are some examples I could share on the Kresge Arts in Detroit website of artists who have been successful and receiving fellowships for social practice or for other ways of being in the world as an artist that blur those boundaries. I also expect going forward it will continue to break down a little bit in terms of like, here's arts admin, here's this. But right now I will say I think that my experience so far is that there are artists working in various programs, but it's not always easy to forefront our artistic knowledge and way of being. You go in and sometimes it's like, well, you put your experience as an artist back here and you show up and you run this program and then after work you do whatever you're doing. So I think it's imperative on those of us who are working in the field to come really be able to forefront, no, I am an artist in a creative practice, which includes creating this program or administering this program, because then from working within the field, we can start to make sure that panelists and programs and funders can understand that it's important not to have these hard lines, because it can keep folks who are doing incredibly work from being able to fit into the application just because the work doesn't quite go into the boxes, if that makes sense. And I also have a really soft spot for the fact that we are trying to do things online, and so then there are ways, there's, as you know, with websites and other things, it's like we're all living in a world where our humanity can't always fit in the presentation format, so it's a challenge to try to figure out how to have things not become just completely open and then no checks on the system to figure out, well, what's the selection criteria and what are the guidelines? Like there's a balance to be had. I feel like I wandered all over. Hopefully something of that was useful.
I love the question about budgets because I used to administer some fellowships for grad students, and the budgets were the thing that would really sink many people. Work samples, I think, are really critical. The writing, I will say, sometimes we don't read it very thoroughly. You kind of have to get to the point. I mean, if you're looking, honestly, I'm just telling you, if you've been on a jury, I think those of you that were at the Editing Your Images workshop with Chris Frazier, he talked about after being on a jury, he really learned how to color correct because you go through so many images so quickly. But the same is with the writing, you kind of have to get to the point. And you got to start with something, not a hook. You don't have to speak in a different voice, but you do have to do the work yourself to know what the value is of it. And that's really hard. It really is hard as an artist. I struggle with it. But I would suggest getting a buddy or a partner. I have a partner in life who's an amazing writer, and you know, he has a special place in heaven because he's read every fellowship I've ever written, every job application, but he's not an artist too, so he's like, I don't know what this means, you know, and and that's what you need. You need somebody to say like, what are you talking about? You know, like, didn't read the theory, you know, so get to the point. So I would say the images are important, but the budget is too, and it's important because you're trying to decide between all three of these really great artists that are all worthy, but which one of them is going to actually do this, you know? So it's not that people are trying to make you work before you get paid, but they're trying to see how serious you are and how thoroughly you've figured out how to do it, you know, literally how to do it. And sometimes that is like figuring out, and you know, and I guess one question I have with like the pay yourself thing is, are there guidelines for, you know, what artists get paid an hour, or, you know, are there standards that people can find either on your websites or elsewhere to do that?
I will say on CultureSource, we do not have guidelines on what artists typically get paid. I feel like it's best to research that on your own and look for maybe what in your area the average artist is paid based off of the art form, and map that out in the budget. We do expect that you pay yourself. Again, like, we understand how hard it can be to be an artist, in the whole starving artist trope. So it's important that you do include that. Yeah, that's what I have.
So the Working Artists for the Greater Economy link that I mentioned, I would check that out. It's really looking from the view of organizations, and so you can look at that and see that there's like a slider, and it'll say, if my organization budget is this, what should I be paying? But you can use it as an individual to see what those rates are, so that you can get a general idea that might say, you know, if you're doing a commissioned work versus if you're presenting existing work, right? Also, the book that I mentioned from Artists U, so it's artists plural and then just U, Andrew Simone and his group have done such incredible work, and that book that you can order, it's available in I think 3 or 4 different languages, and it's also free as a download, as a PDF. That book has a process to go through to determine what's your hourly rate, and it has a whole strategic planning, but in a fun way. Like, it's one of those books that either people love it or they're like, I hate this, and they don't like that approach. So like, if you don't open it and you're just like, oh, you got me, right? Then find something else. There's lots of other resources about strategic planning and figuring out your hourly rate. But it is so very basic in order to say, what do I need to live this year? How many hours will I be working? How many weeks? And so what's my hourly? The harder part is to get other people to understand that that is your rate, and to figure out why they need to have a line item in their budget to pay artists. But all of us will change that by saying, like, yeah, we're doing this because we are working, and therefore, like anyone else, you wouldn't ask your accountant to volunteer. You wouldn't ask anyone else to volunteer, right? You don't call Uber and go like, I don't know, it looks like you're having fun, I'm not gonna pay you today, right? It's just like having fun is zero to do with whether people get paid. And at the moment, whether it might be my choice or not, we do live in capitalism, and people do have to pay bills. And while that is the situation, artists deserve to be paid. So Artists U and Working Artists for the Greater Economy, and getting really square with money, getting a coach, getting anyone you might need in order to be able to talk about money and not go in sheepishly and be like, I'm asking for $250 an hour, I don't feel comfortable with that. You know, like, just be in there and be like, this is $250 an hour. That's what that's gonna be. And that's just the way it is. And people are either going to go yes or no. If it's something else that you're doing for yourself, or maybe it's something you're willing to do for a different rate, again, I'm just picking up a number, but just get to a point where you're comfortable being able to say this is what it is. Because if you're not comfortable saying it, people will pick up on it, and it will force a lot of internal work around money. And most of us have a whole lot of stuff about money, because how can we not?
Hi. Oh. I'm gonna kind of go back to what these two talked about. Like, say you're an artist and you have like this great idea for a community space, like spread art. Like, I love spread art, you know. Is it smarter to be me as the artist with this like idea applying for a grant as an artist and try to like support it with materials that maybe don't exist but like from my work? Or do I like kind of do legwork, like I'm gonna file with a nonprofit and I have this idea and these values and this mission, and then try to come back with no precedent of this organization or, you know, idea for a space doing anything? Like how, like what's the right way to go about that, I guess?
I'm going to say this back to see if I understood the question. I think I did, but my brain kind of was like, oh, that's so cool, and it went like 50 ways. I believe that the question has to do with an artist who's also interested in having a space, and you know, whether that's curating or presenting one's own work or collaborating, et cetera, and this physical, you know, space itself, how to go about funding when you do both of those things, and whether becoming a nonprofit, a 501c3, is a good path. Is that in the range? Okay, cool. So yes, I'm going to say that before I would ever recommend someone think about going down the 501c3 route, I would look into Fractured Atlas and other opportunities for fiscal sponsorship, because those are often fantastic ways to be eligible for grants that are for nonprofits, but you don't have to be a nonprofit yourself. You are under the umbrella of their nonprofit. Locally Allied Media and CultureSource, right? I was like, wait a minute, there's someone else. She's right here, right? So CultureSource also has fiscal sponsorship available. So folks will basically take a small fee to do a whole lot of things that are well worth that fee that you won't have to do yourself. And then well, I'll leave it to you to share more about that. So as an individual looking at a space, I think the answer is just where you have a track record, because almost everything is going to require you showing the demonstrated history of something, even if what you want to do next is different, but you've got to have that track record before of saying, well, I did found this, you know, community organization, I had this space. Then people will look at your budget and they'll look at your narrative and go, oh, I know this person can do that because I saw they did this. And the budget, to your point, people are often looking at it to be like, does this make sense? Because sometimes you can see a budget and be like, whoa, that doesn't make any sense. It does not necessarily a deal breaker. It might be like, yeah, but they're going to figure it out. Or it might be something where it's like, is this really feasible? And you look and you go, oh, that's feasible because this person clearly has done this enough that they've got reasonable numbers, even if they're not going to be the final numbers. Running a space, being an artist, all of those things, I just would say don't overlook the opportunity also of earned income as opposed to unearned income. And shout out to all the folks who are running spread art these days, because I haven't been involved in a long time. But if there's something useful that I can provide in terms of thinking about that earned income, residency programs, et cetera, and also artist co-ops and artist self-funding, I'm a big believer in artists also coming together and using models that have historically existed of any number of communities, taking good care of themselves. And in a lot of ways, I think that's an important part of the future of where arts communities will go, is a sharing economy among ourselves so that we're not competing as much as we're actually advocating on our own behalf.
Christina expressed all of that beautifully. I really don't have too much else to add. Besides, I just want to second all of that and say that, you know, it is worth maybe looking into fiscal sponsorship, which we do offer, and I forgot in my presentation. Yeah, you want to, you know, make yourself available to as many opportunities as possible. So yeah, maybe before you go that route, look into fiscal sponsorship. That's all I have.